Research. Welcome to our webinar today, which will be led by Scott Richards, Chairman of Dial 800 and CEO of Reconnect Research. Scott's passion has been studying industries, identifying where there are gaps in efficiency, and then designing solutions that address these inefficiencies cost effectively. Over 20 years ago, Scott did this with the direct response television and radio advertising industry. He observed that advertisers were using toll-free numbers with random digits. Drawing from the science of cognitive numeric theory and memory chunking, Scott wrote an algorithm that recommends digit patterns that are easy for consumers to recall. Drawing upon a bank of these easy-to-remember numbers, advertisers now enjoy an increase in inbound response ranging from 20 to 70%. Today, Dial 800 is a leader in the direct response industry and has been named to the Inc. 5000 of the fastest-growing privately held companies for the past 6 consecutive years. In addition to acting as Dial 800's chairman, Scott is the CEO of Reconnect Research and a member of APOR. Reconnect Research utilizes a platform he invented that connects people already on the phone to research surveys and political polls. Today, you'll learn how this new platform creates greater alignment between research methodology and consumer behavior, producing better outcomes. Please note, at the end of this presentation, Scott will be happy to address your questions, which you can type in the question box on the right of your screen at any time. If you would like a recording of this webinar emailed to you, please type that in the box on the right as well to let us know. Now, let's get to the webinar. Please welcome Scott Richards.
Thank you, Jen, and I want to thank everybody for taking time out of your busy day to spend a few moments to look at what we hope to be a revolutionary new system for collecting data in the research world. I want to make the first disclaimer that we are telecom experts. We are not researchers. So anything we have to say is really going to be about telecom. It is not going to be about data science or crunching numbers or polling. It's how do we get people more effectively to answer questions. So I thought we would start by looking at a short clip from Bloomberg last week.
Almost every poll failed to predict Donald Trump's winning the presidency of the United States over Hillary Clinton.
The polls were wrong, really dramatically.
Brexit polls.
The pollsters have got it wrong again.
The 2014 U.S. congressional elections polls.
Where did the Democrats in the White House get this wrong?
Polls in Israel, Greece, Scotland. Wrong, wrong, and wrong. Today in the U.S., there's Gallup, Rasmussen, Quinnipiac, YouGov, Reuters, even yours truly, Bloomberg conducts them. The list goes on and on. But it's getting harder and harder to trust their accuracy. One reason? The cell phone. Because of a ban on cell phone auto-dialing, all calls to cell phones must be made manually, which is not only time-consuming, but expensive. Also, since anyone receiving a call on their cell can see who is calling, they tend to simply just not answer the pollster's call. Pew Research's response rate in 1997, 36%. In 2012, 9%.
So I wrote an article in Survey Magazine last July, and it's outbound robocalls will soon be extinct. It's the #1 complaint of the FCC. Pollsters and survey people calling people, interrupting them during dinner. But inbound MIDI calls, which we will explain, that is the framework that we have, says we'll save the day for market research. Because what we have been able to do is build a technology that speaks to the people on cell phones in a very cost-effective way. 58% of America only answer or use their cell phone, even if they have a landline. And it's extremely expensive and time-consuming to manually dial the cell phones. Robodials, you can robodial landlines, you cannot robodial cell phones. And because of that, it's not efficient to be able to collect large amounts of data in a very short period of time. However, the system that we've built is extraordinarily cost-effective and lightning fast. It's called Inbound Calling Survey. And we're going to explain what Inbound Calling Survey is and how it can be used by all of research as it is currently being used right now. So, real simply, we take people that are already on the phone, we connect them with research surveys. How we do it, that's what we will explain. And we'll also explain some of the results that we've gotten that I think you'll find very interesting. So in the research parlance, inbound calling survey is a cost-effective, fast, non-probability phone methodology for collecting representative data from the general population and targeted subpopulations. We receive calls from virtually every American and Canadian, and really, this is a worldwide service. We're just starting in America. You may have seen some of the press that we received on some of the things we've done. The Wall Street Journal was last week, or a couple of weeks ago, and CNBC made a video on what we did in the Florida primaries, which I'm going to show you in just a bit. But first, let's take a look at last APOR in May in Austin. Burton Levine, a statistician and expert in outbound RDD sampling, has conducted well over 100 outbound RDD samples. He spoke a 15-minute presentation at APOR, and this is a 20-second clip on what he said regarding the representativity of inbound calling survey. Let's take a listen.
After calibrating the inbound calling survey data, I got an unequal weighting effect of 1.14. And people who do weighting know that's really low. This match is closer to the population. I was actually shocked. I fielded well over 100 telephone surveys, outbound telephone surveys. I've never had results where the respondents matched the population ever, and all 100 that matched as nicely.
So last week, or a couple weeks ago in the Wall Street Journal, quote, Pew and research firm RTI International now are analyzing the feasibility of Mr. Richards' idea. This seems to collect an evenly distributed sample that doesn't require much weighting, said Dr. Carl Karotke, a senior research statistician at RTI. Well, since our article was written and they interviewed us quite some time ago, we've done a lot more work since then, and it's very, very exciting of the things that are happening using inbound calling survey. But I want to show you where these calls come from. We call this the voice superhighway. There's about 1,500 carriers in the United States and Canada. The ones that you know, like AT&T, Level 3, maybe Verizon, T-Mobile, things like that. But there's about a whole bunch of carriers that you don't know, and they're all interconnected with each other. Together, they transport about 150 billion calls each and every month in what we call the North American Numbering Plan, which is the United States, Canada, and the territories of the Caribbean. Naturally, when we make this worldwide, it will be many multiples of this. But the real interesting part here is the 5 to 10 billion calls that don't connect. And we call these MIDI calls. And MIDI is an acronym that represents these calls that don't connect. Carriers, I will tell you right now, are extraordinarily interested in monetizing these calls that they make no money on right now. And so let's take a look to see what MIDI stands for. Here's what you may hear when you make a call, and we'll show you the acronym.
The number you have dialed is no longer in service. If you feel you have...
Your call cannot be completed as dialed. Please check the number and dial again.
So the first 3 letters, MID, stands for you dialed the wrong number. You misdialed. You dialed a 2 instead of a 3, and you got a non-working number. Second one is a technical issue. Carriers that can't connect a call will either play a message that says, we couldn't complete your call, try again, or they'll play dead air. Have any of you listening ever made a call where you got dead air? Well, probably you made a MIDI call. And a disconnected number, you called the right number, but they weren't there anymore because they're not in business anymore. And that number is, again, sitting in a carrier's inventory of numbers not being used. And the final I is for inbound because, as we said earlier, people are making the call. We're not calling them, they call us. So it's 100% inbound. Let me show you what it actually looks like in kind of a funnel form here. So the carriers forward millions of calls that they can't complete. We ask them, would you like to do a survey? And then we screen them for demographics and things like, you can see gender, age, ethnicity, so on and so forth. And then the survey instrument is actually given one of three ways. Either fully on the IVR, which is absolutely the most cost-effective and fastest way to collect large amounts of data, or it can be given via text message with a link to an online survey, or for qualitative research, we can send that call to a live interviewer. And all three ways are fine. What we have is we have the collection mechanism, we have the IVR, and we have beautiful voice talent and a lot of experience in getting people to do things because we've been in the direct response business for about 30 years. So the cool thing about MIDI calls, as we talked about earlier, is virtually everybody makes them. And as you'll see later, millennials make them just like older people and every ethnicity. And it's fascinating. So what would you hear, perhaps, if you made a call like this? Here is the beginning of message, one of the messages we used for the case study that RTI International conducted, led by Dr. Carl Korotke and Burton Levine. Listen to this message.
Please answer our important national health survey. We're America's real opinion. Don't miss this opportunity to have your voice heard. The survey will take less than 3 minutes. Let's begin. Would you say that in general, your health is excellent, very good, good, fair, or poor? If excellent, press 1. If very good, press 2. If good, press 3. If fair, press 4. If poor, press 5.
So we asked approximately 17 questions that mirrored the Center for Disease Control BRFIS study, Behavioral Risk Factor Surveillance Study. It's the largest health-related survey conducted in America. Approximately 400,000 Americans every year are asked how their health are. About 400,000 Americans every year are asked how their health is and put into the demographic and geographic profiles. So we asked 52,000 and change people, and we got almost 7,000 people responding, which was a 14.5% completion rate. As Pew reported earlier, 9% or so, and that was in 2012, probably less, people answer or complete surveys when they're outbound called. But inbound calling, we got 14.5%. Half of the people we gave a reward to, and the other half we didn't give a reward because the researchers wanted to see, was there a difference in the quality of the caller or the response rate? And we learned, by the way, giving a reward was only an additional 1% or so in completion rate. So let's take a look again. Burton Levine from RTI pointed out that we had a 1.14 UWE, unequal weighting effect. And the CDC, using outbound calling, which is to be expected, had a higher unequal weighting effect, meaning we were closer to 1, which is the census, closer to the population. And so when he said that he's conducted over 100 outbound surveys and he's never seen something more representative of the US population than inbound calling survey, this is what he meant. So one of the big reasons is because we have people who are calling on cell phones. In fact, 50% of the people that completed the surveys were calling from cell phones. And as we reported earlier, 58%, according to the research, of people only use their cell phones, or mostly only use their cell phones, even if they have landlines. So we're getting the devices that people are using. Now, let's take a look at men versus women. You can see the gold is ICS, inbound calling survey, and the gray is the US Census. We're very close in female and male. How about age? You can see we have 10% or so of the 18 to 24 millennial crowd. That was, by the way, double the amount that the CDC gets because millennials typically don't answer their phone and certainly are really good at screening calls for numbers that they don't know. But you can see basically every age category. The race, every race, white, African American, Hispanic. Now the interesting thing, Hispanics, unacculturated Hispanics are very, very difficult to speak to in research. And we have carriers that have tens of millions of Hispanic callers calling either Mexico or Guatemala or Honduras, and the infrastructure in South America and Mexico is not nearly as good. So they have many, many MIDI calls that they would love to provide us for research. Now, geography, it also looks exactly like America. As you could imagine, California has more calls and Delaware has less. And we are within, in most every state, less than 0.5% of the 35,000 counties that we measured of the actual percentage of that county of the entire United States. So that is also very exciting news. Now, we asked them questions to find out, are they answering honestly? One of the questions is, do you exercise? And we were basically dead on with the CDC. Next is we asked them, how many hours of sleep did you get? And the CDC says 7.1. Reconnect Research with the inbound calling survey says 7. Now this, by the way, is on our website. If you want to see the case study, you can download it, and you can also see the 15-minute video presentation that Burton Levine gave at APOR. So earlier this year, just as some of the things we were trying on our own, we said, let's see if we can poll accurately. So we chose Florida, and we did the presidential primary. We gave the results to CNBC on Monday night before Super Tuesday, and after seeing the actual results from the election, they made this video. Take a watch.
You know, a poll came out today that's through the roof.
In this election cycle, we've seen one thing be wrong over and over again: polling. There are a variety of reasons, but one plain and simple fact is that people don't put up with traditional polling techniques. Those dinnertime robo-dial spam calls just don't pack the same punch as they did a generation ago. But there's a new way. Instead of researchers calling you, it's you calling them and not even realizing it. And when that call goes awry, they'll route you to a survey or a poll to fill out.
Please answer our important national health survey.
Companies like Reconnect Research own hundreds of thousands of phone numbers. Many of them are very close to numbers you would actually want to call. All these so close wrong numbers might get you to something like this.
You'll get $25 dining dollars for answering our important national health survey.
The big advantage to researchers and pollsters, finding people this way is a lot more typical of the average American. Everybody makes phone calls, and events like disconnected calls are equally random. It's better than trying to call people at home and hope they'll pick up and talk. Plus, federal regulation makes it more difficult for telemarketers to reach cell phone users. Also crazy, when people are already on the phone and they get to the survey, they'll stay on and actually fill it out. They don't just hang up right away. Having already carved out some time to get on the phone, they're not as upset as when somebody has spammed them.
The survey will take less than 3 minutes.
Reconnect's polling data has shown it to be more accurate than typical political polls in this election cycle.
So they wrote this copy, and again, you can go to our website, click on the CNBC logo, and actually read it for yourself. But this is what CNBC wrote. In the Florida presidential primary, Reconnect's polling was the most accurate in measuring Democrat Hillary Clinton's performance. She received 64.4% of the vote, and Reconnect's poll, known as America's Real Opinion, had her at 65%. America's Real Opinion beat the results of polls from CBS News, YouGov, and Quinnipiac. Of 7 polls compared, Reconnect was tops. That's impressive, given that there was not any post-survey weighting that happened. These were just the raw numbers. Further research on research needs to be done on inbound calling survey, as reported in the Wall Street Journal. Pew Research and RTI International are continuing to ask questions. And these are some of the questions that we hope to have answered very soon. One is, does the MIDI frame have non-ignorable coverage bias of the general population? So far, we haven't seen it, but further research is obviously warranted. Under what circumstances is the MIDI sampling frame fit for purpose for a given survey's needs? Is ICS data on par with other RDD designs? And do adults reach differ in important ways from the general population, or are they more akin to a random sample? Finally, how does respondent attention and engagement in such surveys compare to catty surveys with RDD samples. So the amazing thing that we have here is we have an opportunity together to create a new methodology called inbound calling survey to help increase the accuracy of polling and surveys in America and the world. Now, just to give you an idea of how many surveys can be done and the amazing speed at which surveys can be completed, let's take a look. At 100 million MIDI calls a month, at a 5% completion rate, that means we could complete 5 million surveys a month. Now remember, in the study that RTI did, we had a 14.5% completion rate. And also, there are 5 to 10 billion MIDI calls in America and Canada. Now that means if we could do 5 million a month, that's over 150,000 a day. And we believe, had we been able to use the MIDI technology and given the data scientists and the pollsters this information, that they would have known that more people were undecided but leaning towards Trump in the final days prior to the election, and the 2016 election wouldn't have been such a surprise. I want to thank you so much for listening. And Jen, if anybody has any questions, now's the time.
Okay, great. Thank you, Scott. Yes, we do have questions that have come in. First one is, can you tell us who some of your clients are?
I would love to. I can tell you we are doing government studies right now, and we've got a gigantic commercial study, a national commercial study, 25,000 completes all over the United States. We're a very interesting subject, but as you can imagine, we're under strict NDA, and we cannot publicize the actual clients we have. But I can tell you we are extraordinarily busy.
Okay, great. Then another question is, do you find that rewards help performance?
Yeah, so the rewards gave us about a 1% lift in the case study. And all else being equal, we would prefer to give rewards because we want people who are taking these surveys to feel great about taking these surveys. And when they hear another survey because they made a MIDI call, they'll say, yeah, I'd like to do that. And they'll tell their friends. So to the degree that we could give rewards, I think it will be good for the marketing aspect of this to really get it out there, because the more people that like this and know it and trust it, the rates of completion will continue to increase, which will continue to decrease the cost of collecting such vital data.
Great. Okay, there's another one, which is basically, we've got a few here asking about what is the cost for doing a survey with Reconnect?
Great question. I can tell you we are well over 50% less than doing outbound RDD. In fact, in one case, we found that the competitor in the RFP for an RDD survey versus our inbound calling survey was 3 or 4 times the actual cost. So very, very inexpensive.
And then one last one here is, how long does it take to get a survey in the field?
So we can get a survey in the field in a matter of a couple of days. We prefer about a week ideally, and the speed at which we can complete them is extraordinarily fast. Right now we could complete 5,000 to 10,000 surveys a day, 20 question Gen Pop, and as we continue to go forward, we will be able to do exponentially more as we increase the amount of demand for surveys and the supply from the carriers.
Okay, great. Well, it looks like those are the questions that have come in, and I want to thank you, Scott, for this great presentation, and for everyone who participated today, thank you. Again, if you would like a recording of this webinar, go ahead and fill out the box on the right to let us know, and we thank you for joining us today.
Thank you, everyone, for spending your time today with us, and thank you, Jen, for moderating.